Hello and welcome to this video defense of my research project for the history of American entrepreneurship since 1900. For my topic, I chose to look into changes in the agricultural sector of the economy. A widely recognized phenomenon in 20th century American agriculture was the huge decline in the number of farms in the United States. My research question for this project asked, what caused the massive decrease in the number of farms? My thesis answered this question by stating that the massive decrease in the number of farms in America during the 20th century was primarily caused by technological innovations. These innovations vastly increased agricultural productivity and amplified the level of competition between farmers, driving the less productive farmers out of business. The number of farms in the United States reached its peak in 1935 at 6.8 million farms. That number began to gradually decrease in the 1940s before beginning a precipitous descent in the 1950s. The number of farms finally leveled off in 1982 at around 2.2 million, and despite some fluctuations over the final 20 years of the century, remained close to that number. This change looks even more drastic when the farm population is portrayed as a percentage of the total U.S. population. In 1900, nearly 42% of Americans lived on farms. That percentage dropped to less than 2% by the 1990s. The nature of American agriculture and the rural landscape were transformed during the 20th century as millions of Americans moved off of farms in search of work and new opportunities. This population shift had economic, social, and political ramifications, and technological innovation was the driving factor behind this change. The analysis portion of this research project is divided into three main sections. The first section examines the extensive growth of American agriculture during the first 3 decades of the 20th century. Extensive growth refers to a situation in which there is an increase in the total output, but the output per given input remains constant. Essentially, more inputs are employed, and this in turn leads to higher total output. The second section examines the period of intensive growth from 1930 to the end of the century. Intensive growth refers to an increase in total output in which the output per given input increases. New or existing inputs are employed in ways which increase their productivity. The third section explores the impacts of this intensive growth on American farms. The key primary sources which provided data for quantitative analysis were collections of statistics provided by the U.S. Census Bureau and the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Primary sources which provided qualitative information included newspaper articles and special census reports. My research findings support my thesis. I found that American agriculture experienced a period of extensive growth from 1900 to 1929, but yields per unit of production did not change significantly during that period. Major changes began to take place in the 1930s when American agriculture entered a period of intensive growth. During the 1930s, yield per unit of production began to increase significantly, both in crops and livestock. Corn and wheat yields provide a good example. Average corn yields per acre increased 5-fold by the end of the century, and average wheat yields more than doubled. This intensive growth was caused by technological innovations in 4 categories: mechanical, chemical, biological, and managerial. In combination, these technologies vastly increased yields per unit of production on American farms. As a result, farming became more competitive. Farmers who were able to adopt cutting-edge technologies and expand their economies of scale gained a competitive advantage. Farmers who were unable to adopt new technologies or expand the size of their operations gradually fell behind, and their farms often became economically unprofitable. This led to many farmers leaving farming altogether or being forced to seek off-farm income in order to meet their basic needs. Due to this need to adopt economies of scale, there was a concentration of farm production into fewer and larger farms by the end of the 20th century. In 2002, only 3.3% of farms, the very large farms, produced 62% of all farm products in America. By contrast, 57% of farms, the small farms, only produced 1.2% of all farm products. The first 2 decades of the 21st century have seen the continued expansion of economies of scale in agriculture. The question now, will the small farmers continue to operate, or will they sell out to large farms, leading to an even smaller number of farms in the United States? Thank you.